What's up, everybody? Welcome back or to the channel. So today we're going to be doing a little maintenance on my truck build over here, and what we're going to be doing today is taking off the factory track bar and we're going to replace the bushings. Now, for many of you that have lifted trucks like this, you would probably know, or at least be familiar with, sometimes when things get a little bit loose, your steering starts to get a little loose as well. And a lot of times that loose steering or that wandering feeling where you feel like the bottom of your truck is kind of shifting side to side on you and jerking you around in the vehicle, a lot of that could be tracked down to the actual track bar. Now, sometimes it could just be loose bolts that need tightened up because, let's face it, these big lifted trucks need to make sure everything is extremely tight, because any small amount of looseness is going to cause a lot of issues. Now, many of you might say, hey, Matt, why don't you go ahead and just replace your track bar with something bigger and better? And I will say, I have done that already. I have tried the heavy duty Thurin track bar. I have tried the Carly heavy duty track bar. And from my experience, when I had them on the truck, it didn't seem to ride as nice. It did ride a little tighter, which was a good thing. I still felt a little jerking around a little bit. And because there's no bushings on a lot of those aftermarket heavy duty track bars, sometimes when I turned, I would hear a loud cracking sound because those heim joints at the end of those track bars would slide around a little bit, sometimes under pressure, and smack the metal part. And I just got tired of hearing that loud cracking sound when I was turning my truck under some pressure. So I ended up ripping all of those off, and I ended up going back to my factory OEM track bar, which in my opinion, it does the job. If you powder coat it a nice color, it's gonna do perfectly fine. The only issue when you're running an OEM style track bar on a vehicle like this that's lifted up nice and high is your bushings over time will wear out a lot faster. But it's not that expensive to replace the bushings, and it's really not that hard either. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So without further ado, let's jump under the truck and let's check it out. Okay, so we're under the truck. Now, don't mind, it's a little dirty. I haven't really done a lot of maintenance under here, cleaning things up and repainting things. But as you can see here, that is the factory track bar mount up here. On my lift kit here, I have a drop bracket right here that brings my track bar here down to compensate for the lift kit to get my geometry of the track bar in line with my steering linkage over here. So this bolt here, you want to make sure these bolts here are extremely tight on both sides. A lot of times what happens is when your vehicle's under pressure, this bolt right here will eventually start to stretch out the metal bracket, and you'll start to get an oval circle instead of a nice tight circle. So sometimes when that happens, you can just get some metal plates and weld them in here to kind of tighten it up a little bit, or you could just go ahead and use a drill bit, drill out that hole a little wider and put a bigger, fatter bolt in possibly. But today we're just going to go ahead and take the track bar out and see if we can replace those factory bushings in there. Now over here, this is the other bolt you got to take out for the bottom of your track bar. Now, typically what you want to do, depending on your truck's layout, is sometimes it's easier to turn your wheels this way because you can see it's going up on an angle up. So if you could turn your wheels that way, sometimes that gives you a little bit more clearance right here to get a socket in there to get that bolt off. So I'm going to go ahead and try to do that today. Again, I'm not 100% sure if my bushings are going to need replaced or not. I just know that my truck has about 42,000 miles on them, being that it's been lifted pretty much the whole time, running big giant 40-inch tires here. I would assume that if they're not ready to be changed right now, they're going to eventually need changed at some point. So either way, not a big deal. We're going to go ahead and get that done. So let me go ahead and start working on taking off that track bar, and then we're going to jump into changing those bushings. Okay, so we went ahead and got our track bar off. There's my bracket right there. As you can see here, I just made a couple of these metal brackets a couple years ago, and I have them sitting in between those two little weld points here. That actually holds this in place so that the bolt doesn't slide around, because a lot of times you'll see ovaled out things like that that does not allow this bolt to sit there nice and flush. So you can always just go with a bigger bolt or just get something like this, okay, like that, and then weld some little side marks here. That way, when it's bolted down, it sits in there just like that, and it stops it from sliding. So we got that done. Now on this side over here, there is a nut on the back. You just want to use a wrench or something on the back to hold this nut from spinning while you take the front bolt out, okay? What I use to take the bolt out, Looks like a 1 1/16 socket on the front, and then I just used this large wrench right here on the back that held that way. So that's what I used over there. I did have to use a breaker bar here to break that loose because it is really tight. Once I broke it loose, I just went ahead and used my ratchet wrench here to get it off the rest of the way. On this side, which again, this is why I said if you turn the wheel to the right, you'll see here that the steering linkage lifts up a little bit because of the angle, and it gives you a lot better clearance to get that bolt out. Now back here, take it out here, you do have a flag nut here that kind of just sits in the back and holds in place. So you will not need any type of wrench on the back to hold this in place. If you have one of these, it pretty much holds itself in place once you get the bolt threaded in. So once you break it loose, again, I had to use a breaker bar again on this one too. Once you break it loose, you're good to go. Here's the track bar here. It just needs cleaned up a little bit, but I'm not too worried about it right now. Winter's almost here, so probably next year I'll either have this sanded down and re-powder coated again, or who knows, maybe next year I'll get a different track bar. But for now, I wanted to make sure I got these bushings replaced. So let's go ahead and take it in the garage and start working on it. Okay, so we're back. So first thing you want to do is just kind of inspect your bushings. Right now, I don't really see any major damage, but again, sometimes it's hard to see in here. I mean, the bushings actually don't look really that bad, but we'll have to take a closer look at this. Check the other side. Okay, so they don't really look too bad. So as far as that goes, I don't necessarily know if these bushings are really that bad or if they really need to be replaced. But I went ahead and bought new bushings a couple years ago. I was gonna replace them, but I never got around to it. I figured right now is a pretty good time. So let's just go ahead and open it up and see what we gotta do. Okay, so we're back, and I did get the old bushings taken out. Now I gotta say, it's not easy. Now there might be easier ways to cut them out if you have the right tools, but I don't have any kind of tool that's small enough to go through this hole and cut like a slice all the way down. Some people have done that, but I gotta say, what worked for me is I just took the old trusty hammer and some heavy duty elbow grease and pounded the crap out of it. So basically it's sitting in the ends like this. All right, there's a little lip on one side, so you don't want to pound towards the lip. You want to pound so that the lip is going away from your track bar. So if it was like this, okay, to where this lip is on this side, I want to pound it that way. I went outside, held the track bar on the table, and I literally just banged the crap out of this thing, and then eventually it popped out, all one piece on both sides. So there's this side, there's that side. So I just wanted to let you know, if you put some power behind it and you smack this hard enough with a hammer multiple times, you will break it loose. Now, if you do have troubles breaking it loose, you could get down in here with some type of metal cutting sawzall or something to get in there and cut like a couple slices in here to allow a little bit of compression to give you a little bit more room on the outer parameter to bang it out a little easier. If you have tools to do that, great. I don't have a saw blade small enough to fit through this hole. So I just went the old trusted way and smashed it with a hammer and I got them out. So that's that. So the next thing we got to do is get one side of our new bushings here. I put one of the bushings through already. So what you're going to do is basically slide the thicker bushing here, or whichever bushing you have, through the one side, just like that. And you're going to take the other bushing and set it in there just like this. And then just get like a nice rubber mallet here. Okay. Okay, looks pretty good. A little bit more. Let me just hammer it up here real quick. Okay. All right, so we look good here. So now our bushing's in there nice and good. We have our metal sleeve in like that. We're gonna move to the other side here. Again, take our metal sleeve, push it through the bushing. Okay, slide the new outer sleeve on. Okay, slide this one on top. look pretty good there. Okay, and we're good. Okay, so we're back, and I got the first side of the track bar installed. The new bushings look pretty good. They have a nice tight fit from the left to the right. It really sandwiches that track bar in between the bracket really well. Now, this is the tricky part. When you do the top part, as you could probably see, when you slide it in here, sometimes your bushing will not line up with your holes. Okay, so as you can see here, if I put my little mounting plate back in here, it fits perfectly right here. But as you can see here, my inner sleeve is not quite lined up. So if that happens to be the case, where your track bar on one side does not quite line up perfectly, you might have to manually shift your axle over. And you can honestly do this with a ratchet strap by just hooking up one side of the strap over here to the axle over here, and then strapping it up somewhere on the frame up here, and then just ratchet the strap just a hair to pull the axle over to line it up. So let me do that real quick and I'll be right back. Okay, so I just went ahead and hooked part of my ratchet strap to the passenger side of the frame, took it under to the bottom over here at a stationary point on the axle. Now, as you can see here, I need to get my track bar to come a little bit to the left. You see how the sleeve is a little bit to the right? I need to bring the sleeve in here a little bit to the left to center it. So now that I have my ratchet strap, watch. I'm just gonna strap. Okay. See if I can line that up. Looks pretty good there. So now I'm good to go. So just know that if you happen to take your track bar off and your track bar no longer lines up, just go ahead and use a ratchet strap to somewhere on the frame over here, and then somewhere on the axle, depending on which way you have to shift the axle. It might have to be reversed the other way depending on which way you need to shift the axle, because again, once you take your track bar off, your truck might shift a ½ an inch left or right, and you might have to use a ratchet strap to shift your axle back in place so that you can line your bolt back up. So now I'm ready to do that. Let me put my bolt back in and we'll tighten it all back down. So I'll be right back here in a minute. Okay, we are done. We got the new track bar put in. This is going to be the bottom side here. Nice and level all the way up to the top. All my brackets are put back in. All the bolts are tightened down extremely tight. I did not use a torque wrench. I just tightened them as tight as I could possibly get them using a breaker bar, because these have to be extremely tight. So I just pretty much use a breaker bar here, and I use this large wrench on the back to hold the nut in place, and I get it tight. So everything's tight. If you come down underneath and look, it's nice and tight in here, so there's no more of a little bit of a gap side to side. These new rubber bushings here work really well. They keep it nice and tight. Come over here. On this side, you can see bushings right here, nice and tight. Everything's nice and sandwiched in there really good. Everything's centered where it needs to be. So we are all good to go there. So far, everything's where it needs to be. Everything's tightened down and everything's good to go. So while I'm under here, I do want to show you this too. Now, as you can see right here, I have a steering box brace put on right here. But right above this is your steering nut right there. This big nut right here. You want to make sure every once in a while, get up under here and tighten that down. I think mine is a little loose because the last time I got a little bit of steering wonder left to right. I took it to my buddy's shop and he put a wrench on there and really torqued that thing down. He said it was a little bit loose, so he tightened it down and it really did tighten up my steering wonders. So just keep in mind, if you're starting to get a little death wobble or a little steering wonder left to right, or you feel like your front axle's kind of shimmying left to right, even if it's just a ½ an inch to an inch, that little side to side will jerk you around inside the vehicle. Make sure you come out here and check your track bar. Number one, make sure it's tight. If it's tight and it's still doing it, then you want to double check to make sure you have good bushings. If you have to replace your bushings, you could always replace your whole entire track bar, but let's face it, some of those heavy duty track bars out there from Thurin and Carly and some of the other manufacturers out there, they could be easily $400 to $500 for a new track bar. This track bar here is perfectly fine. It is a pretty solid heavy-duty track bar. However, it's a solid track bar, so it doesn't have adjustable heim joints, and you will have to put in bushings. So every once in a while, especially with lifted trucks, because lifted trucks are going to put a lot of wear and tear on these parts, you probably will need to replace your bushings on your track bar. But once you do that, tighten it all down, double check your steering nut up there where I showed you. If you tighten those down, that really should help tighten up your front end a good bit. But so far, today's project is done. We got the track bar taken out. We removed the old bushings. We put brand new bushings back in. We tighten everything back down, so we are good to go. Take this truck for a little ride down the street. Okay. Now again, big lifted trucks are always going to have a little wonder on the road, because when you're 11 inches in the air and you have 40-inch tires that are 15.5 inches wide, your big tires are going to feel out all the imperfections of the road. So that's just something that comes with the territory of having a big truck. But overall, I could feel it right now that I don't feel the steering wheel really jerking back and forth like it did before. Now, my truck will feel out the imperfections of the road. That's normal. But before, I had so much play in the wheel left and right that it was really starting to get a little unbearable. So again, let me just come down here. I'm going to turn around over here. Sorry for the sun in your face, but let's come over here. Okay, so far it actually feels a good bit tighter. And again, if you check that steering box nut at the bottom, make sure that's nice and tight. That'll also help tighten up your loose steering as well. But for now, so far, these new bushings feel pretty tight. Now, I don't know why it is, because those old bushings didn't really look that bad, but these new bushings definitely help tighten things up a little bit. Again, my steering wheel is not bouncing around so much. I don't seem to have as much play in the steering wheel as I normally did. So far, this actually drives pretty nice. Okay, everybody, so there you go. We got the track bar bushings replaced. It's really not that hard. I gotta be honest, it's not that hard. Once you go ahead and take your track bar out, what I found was the easiest is just to bang the crap out of those bushings with a hammer, and eventually those bushings are gonna break loose and come out. But if yours are in there super, super tight, you might have to cut them out or use some type of wedge, where some people take like a big socket and just pound it in there. Or if you happen to have one, you could use a bushing press. That's obviously going to be the best way to do it, but let's face it, not many people have one of those. So again, what I found easiest to do was just smash it with a hammer. The old bushings popped right out. I put the new bushings back in. I just used a rubber mallet. Sometimes you have to use a vise and kind of pinch it together to get everything to slide in. That works too. Overall, once you put the bushings back in, put your track bar back out, tighten everything down extremely tight, you'll be good to go. So that's it for today's video. I hope this video helps some of you out. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, like this video. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comment section, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And also do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, because it definitely helps me out and I greatly appreciate it. So that's it. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you. I truly appreciate you all. And as always, see you in the next video.